Hello, my name's Mandy Haggith and I'm a poet and novelist, and I count myself as the luckiest person in the whole world because I live here. This is Assynt, the place in the Northwest Highlands that Norman MacKay called this most beautiful corner of the land. We're looking out to the Minch, out towards the Western Isles, and we're on the shore of Loch Roe, so this is the mouth of Loch Roe going out to sea. And yeah, I'm on the croft, and it's a really nice thing that, given that I'm locked down and I can't be down there in Dumbarton with you, I'm able instead to show you where I hang out and where I write the poems that I'm about to read. So what I'm going to do is read a few poems, and then you've sent me some questions, and so I'll then do my best to give you answers to those. I'll start with a poem about what I do most mornings. It's inspired by a poem by W.S. Graham, and the title and the first line is taken from a poem by W.S. Graham. I have my yellow boots on to walk down to the sea, the grey cloth ruffled and crummy with little boats. I have my yellow boots on to sink into the walking waters, submerge and find the world just as it is. I have my yellow boots on to follow in dead men's steps to where the old engine rusts at the shore. I have my yellow boots on to wander out to where waves spume, gannets dive, fulmars soar. And when I get down to the shore, this is who I meet. Seal. Big fat seal shining on the seaweed, tossing bladderwrack, galumphing and humping his blubber, wobbling his tail, flipper-flapping himself to get comfy, now with his tiny webbed arm stump waving, and I wave back, acknowledging the passing season, the changes in residents, the arrival of water skiers, the terns' departure for their winter homes, the problem of heron housing in a time of wind throw, the absence of cormorant today. It's good to greet, be at least on nodding terms. I live here too, among the thrift, the ripples and the rock rack. And I live here with a wonderful man called Bill, whose croft it is, and he's on the other side of this camera. And this is a poem called Crack, which is, well, it's inspired by him. And there's an interesting story behind this poem, which is that I wrote it very fast one day. It all kind of came out in a one-er. And I really liked it, and then I kept sending it away to magazines and things, and it kept being turned down. I kept being sent it back saying, no, we don't want to publish your poem. And but I still believed in it, and it was rejected 12 times. And then I sent it off to a competition, which it didn't win, but it was one of the commended poems. And that felt like, out of hundreds of poems, it was chosen as one that was worthwhile. So for any of you who are writing poems and sending them away and getting rejected, don't lose heart. Keep sending them away, because somebody somewhere will eventually understand what it is you're trying to say. So this is Crack. He says, be quiet, but he doesn't mean it. He means rewind. He means talk forward fast. No need for meanings, he says. Just look at that. Seal on the skerry, ravens on the crag. A diver flies over. Rack, 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 rack. Now we're cooking on gas, he says. Now we're cooking on gas. So another nature poem from here. It's called Knowledge. A gull soars in azure air over satin sea, out beyond anchors and moorings. It must know what it is like to penetrate the blue, rest on a surface of sky, see beyond and through. So too, crabs burying into mud at loch bottom, badgers among wildwood boulders, tits in treetop interstices, bats in snags, spiders in cracks between window and frame, microbes under the fabrics of our lives. All know places beyond our senses, all those other places, all those little vastnesses. I'm very fond of bears. The poems I'm reading are from my most recent collection, Why the Sky is Far Away, and quite a lot of the poems in here are inspired by kind of legends and mythology, and bears are kind of mystical creatures in many cultures, and they have a particular magic. The females going into dens in the winter, round about now, they're going to be feeding up and getting ready for that big long sleep that they do. And they apparently go and bury themselves away and die, and then they're reborn again in the spring, and females often with the magic of young. So they're revered in many cultures, and this is a poem inspired by a poem by Ted Hughes, who was also really into bears. One of the many things I love about his poetry, and it's like his poem. It's a poem about a bear in the winter, and just kind of imagining subjectively, perhaps, what that experience is like. This is Winter Bear. In a cave among bouldery scree, the bear is sleeping. She's dreaming fire inside a rock hollow shaped like a skull. The fuel of the fire is bones. Little brittle bones of bird people are giving out flames like songs, tiny flickering voices of sunshine. A pelvis bellows with the burn of sex. Femurs shout out in pain. A pig's trotter grunts and chars. Sparks chitter from eye sockets, and teeth whisper into ashes. Two spines, one of an otter, one of a fox, smoulder in parallel, crumbling, vertebra by vertebra, into silence. The bear sighs in her sleep, soothed by the heat. Inside her, a fetus grows. In spring, the cub will waken to buds and blossom. The earth will be hungry again. But for now, in the dream flames, hunger is forgotten. Winter chews on its memories, and smoke trickles over the twitching nostrils of the sleeping bear. So I'll read a couple of love poems now, little short one, called after the loch, which is just over the hill over there, the Dhu Loch. Dhu is the Gaelic word for black or dark. Dhu. It starts solid as earth beneath stars when the moon is new. It ends quiet as the loch where ravens flew. Dhu. Its heart is the skerry mew of a winter curlew, while I'm curled up under down with you. Dhu. And here's Heartbeats, which is kind of a love song, for here. Heartbeats. Catch a class act melody, a sentimental tug of strings across the birches of an evening, someone else's happy hour as everybody's sun sets. Hear the birds, the turn's discordant jazz, two divers heading home, a thrush's couplets, thrush's couplets. Listen to the wind's song, rain drums going strong, with ocean bass, wild and improvised, reinventing freshness. But wake to curlews in the morning, mewing winter in, the duvet tight around our eyebrows, noses warm, that rhythm in our chests, and know that this, here, now, this breath, these hearts, are where all harmony is grounded. Here, all music comes to rest. There seems to be a seasonal flavour about these poems, doesn't there? I've spent the last 20 years of my life being an environmental activist, and I've stopped. I've retired from that and devoted the rest of my career to literature, and I'm teaching creative writing and literature at the University of Highlands and Islands. And while I was an activist, I hardly ever seemed to write poems that were about the environmental problems that concerned me in my day job. And since I've stopped doing that job, suddenly those issues seem to be turning up in my poems. So I'm going to read 3 examples of them. So the first of them is very much a poem about here, and it's called Away. Lugging a sordid spill of plastic, we catch the top of the tide to the bridge. Me bailing, Bill rowing. Me pirating, Bill holding the boat. Both of us talking to the seals. We unload sacks, fish boxes, broken buckets, ropes, nets, pipes, bottles, a mountain of jetsam. Wherever they think it will go, the people who throw it, it comes here, riding the waves, corralled by currents, ushered in by prevailing winds, until it finds a tangle of seaweed to clutch, somewhere to become entwined, as if desperate to return to land, to end its restless, deathless journey. You did not throw it there. We cannot take it there. There is no such place as away. I'm mad for the sea and sail a lot, and was lucky enough to go sailing in the Arctic, and when we're out sailing, the great thrill, of course, is to meet a whale. This is in honour of the creatures of the sea. It's called ice flow. Deep below, a whale dives, deeper than light, deeper than time. What do I know? Huge baleen, tons of krill, rise, blow, slow, slow. Fin, blow, dive below. What do I know? Thinning sea ice, plastic, PCBs, bottom trawlers, fishing quotas, oil drilling, sonic blasts, submarines. What do I know? I was challenged to write a poem about climate change, so this is the result. It's called "The volume of 1 kilogram of CO2 is roughly the same as that of a coffin." Every hour, the average Briton fills a coffin. My wood-burning stove fills 10 per day. My journey to work fills 25 coffins. 25 more coming back. This is starting to bring it home. To visit my sister, 82 coffins. My aged father needs company, but it's 104 coffins for us to go there. At least my addiction to fancy notebooks produces a mere 6 coffins per year. See how easily I become complacent. A mere 6. I'm not vegan. Yet. but the 130 coffins from just 1 kilo of cheese is giving me pause, especially if I put inside each coffin a salt-flooded Bangladeshi woman, a sub-Saharan child drought-stricken, a capsized Inuit hunter, or, filling 6 coffins, the 4 legs, head and torso of a polar bear. Thank you very much for listening to that reading. You sent me some questions as well, and so I'll give a go at answering those, and I'll some of the answers might involve reading another poem. The first question is who my favourite poets are, and that's one of those really, really difficult questions to answer. There are so many. I love reading. I start every day in bed with a cup of tea reading poetry, and I'm eclectic, and I like a diversity and like reading as many different voices as I can. But there are obviously poets I go back to again and again, and not surprisingly, living in Assynt, Norman McCaig is kind of top of the list. Some of those poems I've read, I've already mentioned poets like W.S. Graham, Ted Hughes. Mary Oliver, an American woman poet who sadly died recently, she's been a huge influence on me. She's a wonderful poet. And Kathleen Jamie, also brilliant. Seamus Heaney and Kathleen Jamie, I think, I've done a lot of writing about trees and forests, and they have both hugely inspired that. Current poets, I really, really rate Chris Pauici's poetry. He's amazing. If you don't know it already, look out for it. And Helen Moore, a fantastic eco-poet, really recommend her. And I got really obsessed for a while with John Burnside. I think I read everything that John Burnside wrote. He's an amazing poet, and when he won one of the big prizes, he wrote a piece in The Guardian, and in that piece he said that if he comes back in a future life, he would like to come back as a hyena. And there's a funny story that I was once camping in Africa in a national park, and in the middle of the night, a hyena came up to our tent and ran off with one of my sandals, and then sat chewing it under a nearby tree. And I tried to persuade, when I retrieved the remains, the sort of chewed sole of the sandal the next morning, I sent it to Clark's and asked them whether they might be able to mend it or repair it or replace it, and would they like the story about the fact that, hyenas find Clark's sandals tastier than any other, but needless to say, they didn't take me up on this idea. But anyway, when John Burnside said that he would like to be a hyena, that inspired me to write this poem for him, which I sent to him, and he said that he liked one line of it, which I thought was an intriguing response. Probably not the first line, as you'll tell. Hyena for John Burnside. I met you, dog breath, panting into my tent by the black, oozing crocodile river. From time to time, I catch a whiff. Your leathery sweat stench lurks with memory's foxes. Your hot breath on my eyelids jerks me awake, gasping in Tree Creek's starlight. You're still here, gnawing under your acacia, my slavered sandal in your paws, your ember eyes, creaturely and wise, laughing in my face, delighted by your prize. It's a bit cheeky, I know, but so. You asked me about how I write the poems, whether there's a long process of revision and trying to find the form of the poem, and that's also a difficult question to answer, because there are many there are many different ways of finding my way to a poem, and some of them come just like a lightning strike onto the page, and they're somehow ready-made when they arrive. Those are pretty rare, but it does happen. Mostly what I do is that I find myself fumbling in prose. I scribble every morning 3 pages of longhand, morning pages, and often while I'm doing that, I get the sense that there's something starting to coalesce around an idea or a phrase that I'm toying with and playing with, and that will very often then begin a process of multiple drafts while I kind of mould the words, like moulding clay into something that feels like it's stabilizing. And then that question of form, that's a decisive moment when I understand that what the shape of the poem is going to be, how it's going to make itself into stanzas, what size those stanzas are going to be, whether there's a pattern of rhyming that I've started up that I like, that I want to keep going, whether it's going to be short lines or long lines, whether it's going to be kind of irregular but with some kind of overall pattern to that irregularity. Those kind of things are defining of the poem, and then there's a long process of sort of tweaking and trying to get every word to be right, and that process kind of never really goes away. The poem I read about the away, gathering the rubbish, I thought I'd completely finished that, and when I sent it to a magazine, it's going to be published in a magazine called The Fair, and the editor of that liked it a lot, except that they weren't happy with the opening 2 lines, and I went backwards and forwards with the editor several times while we tried to adjust that opening to be exactly right. And that can be really helpful when an editor can look at your poem and suggest things about it which are just not quite up to par. And I try not to be too grumpy about that, and take on board the fact that they're trying to improve the poem. So I wrote quite a lot of poems in this collection about the process of writing poetry. So there's a section called 6 Takes on Writing, which has a bunch of poems in it, which are kind of metaphors for the writing of poems. And so here's one. This is my ongoing metaphor for poetry, which is that they're like little plants. And so my folder of draft poems is called the Nursery, that process of pruning and fiddling with the poem, sometimes making major changes, feels a bit like potting a plant up or something, and eventually you realise, no, that they can go out in the garden now, they can go out into the world. So this is seedlings. Keep them moist, gentle them. Some wilt, others succumb to frost. Bring on the rest, but not too quickly. Pot up, give space, nip out lush growth, show care. Then harden them off for the cold world out there. Ready them for wrath and wonder. There's another one which is I was poet in residence in the Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh for a summer, which was fantastic. And there was a tree there, a beautiful tree, a beautiful apple tree there called Malus Sieversiae. And having that verse in it struck me as it kind of deserved a poem. And maybe it was actually about poems. So this is another of that genre. My apple, as in my poem, my apple began as a bud, opened petals, white as forgetting, pink as new dawns. It is red-skinned like Snow White's. Calvino says the old folk tales are true. I believe that too. A bee came to its honey-smell summons, humming her foraging song, praising the sweetness of works in progress, grazing all the ideas of apples, encouraging them Rain stores memories underground. Sunshine makes them flesh. Later, I will prune the tree, but now I wait. Fruit takes time to form. Okay, another question you asked was about the importance of forests to me. I have written a lot about forests. I've worked as a forest activist for a long time. I'm passionate as a tree hugger and campaigner for forests. And I was asked a really interesting question about whether they're important both for our ecosystems but also for our well-being, which I think is really true. It's a really insightful thing to say. I think we can get a lot of inspiration and support from trees. They live longer than we do. They're wise. They take life more slowly, and they rest a lot. I think that's generally a good idea. I've written quite a lot of poems that are about forests. One of them, a little poem, is actually engraved on a tree, which is a totem pole, not far from where you all are, in the Central Belt, in one of the Woodland Trust reserves. And the poem that's engraved on it is called Resilience. And I think it's something, for me, it's an attempt to convey, and it's one of those poems also that had a lot of editorial back and forth. It's a poem where I think I'm trying to that sense of strength that we can get from trees. Resilience. Forest crests, connected, curl and rake, yet even in the wildest gale, rarely break. Waves of life protected, resist the worst attack, hold fast through every ebb, always flooding back. And at this time of the year, there's nothing quite like an aspen tree. And aspens are in Celtic culture and legend really important trees, and have a kind of a protective function of us. At the moment the colours of the aspens are absolutely fantastic. This little collection of poems called A.B. Tree is inspired by the Gaelic tree alphabet, and so there's a poem in here for each of the letters of the alphabet, which has a tree associated with it. Aspen is the penultimate letter of the alphabet. All the vowels come at the end, and aspen is the tree for the letter E, because in the Old Gaelic it's Ead. So this is aspen, and again another of those poems that I guess is gesturing to the way in which a tree can be our teacher. Aspen. The gentle one waits, naked, as starts are made, false, hopeful, early, wrong. He watches while a protest storm smashes in from the guiltless ocean. He smiles, 1,000 diamond smiles, while hope is dashed. The gentle one is always last to begin spring. Though soon he's taller, greener, more exuberant than every other, clapping and clapping, an ecstasy of celebration, of growth, sunshine, birds, rain, everything good in being. Summer is short, the gentle one says. Winter is long. You may dress yourself in gold, but armour will not make you wise or strong. So another question you asked was whether I'd like to see bears and wolves return to Scotland. And there's a short answer, and that's yes. and I think that we've got a deer problem, and far too many deer, and a necessity to keep endlessly culling them because of the damage they do to vegetation, the erosion that they cause by their footfall, and I believe that instead of us being the only apex predator, our ecosystems would be much better if we had some other carnivores, to help keep that balance. Bears, of course, would play a role in that, but the biggest role that bears play in the ecosystem is as a spreader of seeds. So all those oak trees that we have in Scotland, certainly in the north, where there are no jays to spread them, and an awful lot of those oaks are here because bears would have spread the acorns north after the Ice Age. So anyway, I've read a bear poem already, and but I'll read this poem, which is an imagining of what happens when a bear comes to Glasgow, and it's called "This is no place for a bear." It's the back end of Glaswegian amusement, where East Riders pay no poll tax, and pleasure seekers only come for sleaze. Smell the sweet lemon tang of cheap perfume, the people's piss, the cigarettes, the fast food trash. One short, high, mini-skirted moment of bliss. Hold, nudge, hold, nudge, hold, nudge, roll. Afghani black or Egyptian gold. It's a cash pot, it's an air vent, it's scaffold. Beware, bear. Beware the nighttime shadow watchers. Sharp edges in doorways, dog shit on curbstones. There's no food here, just plantain, buddleia, a withered thistle. The old rag and bone man says there's too much art here. Look, rusty screws, broken bottles, peeling pin-ups, blocked-in windows, street lamps, wires. Get lost, bear. Go north. Get out of the freak show. It's a burst balloon. It's a skipload of guttering. Watch your paws. Keep out of the bins. Mind how you go now. Go now. And you'd be very welcome here, of course. Both the bear and all of you. Final poem, and the final question you asked was, does Assynt inspire a lot of my poetry? And you know the answer to that already from what I've read. And I'll finish with a poem that really kind of gets it home. And the stone, the bedrock here, is called gneiss. It's incredibly hard and incredibly old, billions of years old. So this poem is called Gneiss, and subtitled, "You Are What You Eat." Since living in Assynt, I've become a little sandstone, a smidgen quartzite, a morsel porphyry, but mostly nice. I have Atlantic omelette for brains. I contain beach shells, ground to sand, pecked at by hens. But mostly I'm nice. I eat nice turnip, potatoes, parsnips, carrots. I eat nice onions, garlic, beans and peas. I don't eat nice rice, but I have eaten nice ice cream. Slowly, year by year, meal by meal, I am turning into the oldest rock in the world. Thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all well. Thank you, Dumbarton Library, for hosting me here, and I hope you have a wonderful Book Week Scotland. Bye-bye.